Hello everybody, welcome back from our 2-week break. This is a video specifically for my Math 2413, my Calculus 1 students. I hope you had a great 2-week break. And before we jump into kind of new material this week, we've had a couple weeks off, so I wanted to just make a video that kind of walks you through a little bit of review of some of the stuff that we've been doing. By the way, I've posted a lot of information on eCampus. I sent them to you in an email about our new structure. So please take a couple of minutes if you haven't already and take a look at kind of where to find all of our materials for the course. We have a textbook, we have PowerPoints, we have worksheets, we have videos that I'm going to be posting, we have the test reviews like we always did, we had the homework like we always did. So there's a lot of resources. They're not all required for you to do. Some of them are, but some of them are not. But before we just kind of look at some new material this week, we are jumping back into math this week, and we're gonna try to make up for a little bit of lost time, and we're gonna be jumping into finishing chapter 3. Originally, our plan was to have test 2 at the beginning of next week. I think that something like that is still reasonable, like either over this weekend or probably early next week. I'll talk a little bit. I'll send you an email about more details about how we're going to do testing. But I wanted to just make a video about some review. And so just kind of going over some of the stuff that you should remember from before the break, or I hope you remember from before the break. So these are all things that are going to show up on test 2 next week. I want to just kind of help you kind of ease back into things, or I guess jump back into things quickly, but not on your own. Want to be here to help you with that. So I just want to kind of run through some sections real quick and make sure that you're aware of kind of what should you be doing kind of before now, what should you be working on now, and what is this week going to look like. What are you going to be working on this week in preparation for our second test coming up, and kind of in preparation for the next like month and a half or 2 months of class, basically. So test number 2, which we're going to have kind of early next week, I would say we're going to have it where we have to finish it, well, not test 1, test 2, where we have to finish and take the test by early next week sometime. So again, I'll give you more details about what that looks like, but just as a refresher, this covers some of chapter 3. So it covers sections 3.1. These are all sections that we've already covered, and we'll look at just briefly kind of what was covered in each section. Goodness gracious. 3.4. I'm still on break apparently. So, just kidding, I've been working a lot. But 3.6 up to 3.6 is kind of, well, I guess actually we covered 3.7 as well. So that was kind of where we stopped. As a reminder, we are skipping section 3.8 and we're going to include the new sections that we haven't covered yet, that we're going to cover through videos and PowerPoints and worksheets and all this stuff. And you can already see those online. Is section 3.9 and section 3.10. So those are going to be the new ones for us. So just a little bit of a reminder of kind of what some of these sections covered. 3.1, really a lot of chapter 3 so far is about finding derivatives and how do you find derivatives of certain kinds of functions. So 3.1, you may remember, was derivatives of polynomials, so using power rule, and exponential functions. So those are kind of the two main ideas. We've seen a ton of these. If you're saying, hey, what's the power rule, or how do I take a derivative of an exponential function, that's a problem at this point. We've seen those a ton, and so those should be things that we are very, very familiar with, even from before the break. I hope a 2-week break didn't make those ones at least, you forget those ones, because some of the other things I might be able to understand, but man, we've dealt with those so much. So section 3.2 talked about the product rule and the quotient rule, and we worked on these a lot in class, but again, these rules take a lot of practice, so I would recommend going and working through a lot of practice for the product rule and quotient rule. First of all, you can check out the test review that I've posted on or actually not on eCampus, but on WebAssign. So it's under the Resources tab down at the very bottom under in our course in WebAssign. You can find the test 2 review. You can also go find a bunch of worksheets or a bunch of problems about any of these kinds of derivatives, along with some of the homework as well as the study plan on WebAssign as well as a good resource as well. Section 3.3, we talked about the derivative of trig functions, and so how to take the derivative of sine, cosine, tangent, secant, cosecant, all those other ones. We've mainly focused on the sine, the cosine, and the tangent, but they're all good ones to know. So the trig, so I would say trig derivatives are good things that they really, even after a 2-week break, you should be perfectly fine with those. Thinking about the derivative of a sine as a cosine function, the derivative of a cosine is a negative sine. So those ones hopefully are still pretty fresh in your mind. Hopefully they haven't fallen too far back in your memory. After we talked about trig, got to kind of rifle through my book here. After we talked about trig, we talked about the chain rule. And this was getting into somewhere where the chain rule definitely takes some more practice as well. And so, again, you'll see a lot of the chain rule on the test review. And you can go and take a look at a bunch of worksheets online about how to take derivatives using a chain rule, or we also had a lot of homework in the study plan there as well. So chain rule is something that we've dealt with a lot. Again, shouldn't be something new or foreign or unfamiliar to you. But that being said, it might be worth brushing up on and just reviewing a few problems that use a chain rule so that you're really aware of how to use those. Section 3.5 talked about implicit differentiation, and so this was a lot of the stuff involving like dy dx, so finding the derivative of both sides of an equation. Remember, this is helpful if we don't just start out with a function that looks like y equals something. This is helpful when we have y's and x's in the problem and we want to take the derivative of both sides and get dy dx by itself. Remember, with this, we don't even have to be talking about a function. We could just be talking about an equation that has a relation of the two variables. Okay, and then we used implicit derivatives, implicit differentiation, to talk about our last family of functions. Remember, in class I said that it's your second favorite family of functions behind trig functions. This is, of course, obviously talking then about the derivative of logs. And so when you have logs, we talked about the natural log, and what if you have a log with a different base, a base of b, and so derivatives of log functions. And really, all of sections 3.1 through 3.6 says, do you know how to take a derivative? So I'll tell you what, even though we're switching to an online format, we're still going to have a test 2, and you can still imagine what's going to be on test 2. So far we've had tons of problems that have basically said, find the derivative, find y prime, or find dy dx. And so you shouldn't be surprised that there's going to be a ton of problems on test 2 that say, find the derivative, or use the derivative somehow, but you got to go find it first. And so just keep in mind, where do you have your rules? Where do you have derivatives that have product rules? Where do you have derivatives that have quotient rules? Where do you have derivatives that have chain rules? Are you talking about derivatives of a polynomial using a power rule? Are you using an exponential, using a trig, or using a log? What kind of stuff are you using? Okay, so by the way, the purpose of this video is not necessarily to look at a lot of different examples, more just to kind of go over the topics. And then as is a good idea, whenever you have any kind of review for a test, I think it'd be a good idea for you to go back through and say, what stuff do I remember well? What stuff do I not remember well? Where do I need to spend some time in this next week kind of catching back up after we've had 2 weeks off? So good things to take a look at. Where do you want to spend your time? Okay. Section 3.7 talked about some applications. Now, after we dealt with 3.1 to 3.6, which basically said find the derivative, now section 3.7 said can you use derivatives with applications? And so I would say this is really called applications in the what do we call it? The physical and the social sciences, or I guess in the natural and social sciences. And these were a lot of different problems that talked about being able to use wording that was similar to the derivative. So it might say something like an instantaneous rate of change, or it might say something like find the speed or find the velocity at a certain time, or we could even have talked about acceleration in these problems. Remember, acceleration is talking about a second derivative. And so really it's just, these are word problems that have a real-world context, but really they involve finding a derivative and then using the derivative. Okay, so I write out this list to kind of help you say, where do you need to spend some of your time in the next week as you work to get caught up, as you work to kind of refresh some of this stuff from coming back from a 2-week spring break. Okay, the next 2 sections we're going to look at, you're going to see videos online about these that I'm going to create, and then those will actually be posted today. At some point. And then there's also worksheets for these sections. There's also PowerPoints you can read through the book. 3.9 we may have even started talking about in class before the break, but I'm going to go ahead and create a whole new video for that and look at a number of different examples. Anyways, section 3.9 is about something called related rates. And then section 3.10 actually has kind of 2 different subtopics. One of the subtopics is called a differential, and it's okay if you don't know what this is yet. We haven't talked about this yet, so but there will be a video and some materials for you to learn this. So we're talking about differentials, and a second subtopic is something called linearization. Okay, so as we kind of start on this brave new adventure of an online class, I want you to be able to kind of pick up where we left off, but I realize it's been a couple weeks. We've all been thinking about, coronavirus and reading news every day and watching the stock markets and just seeing the world go crazy. So it's time to get back into things, and I hope that kind of provides a sense of, semblance and or back to normalcy for you. I know it's going to be for me. It's kind of already started that way. But that being said, if you're going to take a test over material in about a week from now, I want to make sure that you're aware of kind of what that's going to cover, what does that look like, and you have a good idea of what you need to be going back and reviewing. Okay, so let me know how I can help. I have office hours every day. I would love to see you in office hours. Okay, I have office hours virtually through Zoom. You can check eCampus for some more details about how to sign up or how to come and join me for virtual office hours. I hope you take advantage of that. I think that's going to be a really good resource, and I would highly recommend. I think one of the best ways you can be successful in this course from here on out is to come and visit me in office hours. But this is just a little refresher video to help you kind of pick up where you left off. So what do you need to do this week? And we're going to look at 3.9 and 3.10 this week, but what do you need to do to kind of refresh some of this material, go back through a lot of practice problems and examples that will help you be ready for test 2, which is going to be early next week sometime. Okay, let me know what questions you have. I'm excited to have you kind of back in a virtual class. I guess it is a little different. I am disappointed that I'm not going to get to see you face to face, but please let me know how I can help as you jump back into things. Okay, I hope this video is helpful just to kind of review some of the stuff we've done in the past in Chapter 3. And keep an eye out for my videos later on today talking about Section 3.9 and 3.10.